Welcome to the Railway Series Book Club, the podcast where we dissect the Railway Series. I'm Jamie.
I'm Marina.
I'm Liv.
And we hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Railway Series Book Club, the podcast that is, Christmas! It's Christmas, not... Well, it's not Christmas right now, but when this episode comes out, it will be Christmas. So, Merry Christmas, Happy
holidays, everyone!
Yeah. God, last episode, I meant to, because, last episode came out on the first day of Hanukkah, so I really wanted, I should have put down a note somewhere to say Happy Hanukkah in that episode, and then I didn't, and now I'm gonna live with that shame forever.
It's really okay with last episode, because I fully take the blame for that, because
We did kind of go off the rails, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of derailed things incredibly with how much I went off last week.
Last episode was a bit of a doozy, but that said, I feel like it came out really good when you showed up with a steel chair and just, fucking went to town. I feel like that made for a good episode in the end. But today's story...
Marina beats the ever-living shit out of Henry the Green Engine and other stories.
I'm going for the fucking Wooden Railway Community Championship belt.
Yeah!
Steel chair wrestling rig.
Your laugh is really cute.
You're really cute.
Okay, God, I'm surrounded by gay people.
And you're one of them.
Yes, but I'm not, going off about, I guess it's easier for me to not go off because, they're not here, but whatever. The point is, today's episode probably isn't going to be as complicated as the last few episodes have been, since the story's kind of basic.
Yeah, and I actually like this one.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't embody everything I hate related to Thomas.
I actually feel like there is a lot to say about this episode, but I honestly kind of feel like this story is kind of the most forgettable out of the first few in this book. Edward's Day Out isn't particularly, memorable on its own, besides, just being kind of nice. And I suppose that's why they rolled it into the TV version of Edward and Gordon. But, I don't know. Maybe I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, I get what you mean. Edward's Day Out it's notable in the fact that, it's still, the most, it's the start of everything. And, it's kind of a forgettable story on its own, but, with that and, the context of how it came about and everything, it makes for an interesting topic. And, Edward and Gordon has the whole... the first time they really had, two characters interacting, and Sad Story of Henry has the plethora of issues that I won't get into, but, this one, honestly, really the only notable bit of history I can think of is that, it was an editorial mandate, pretty much, which was one of the best decisions they could have made.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that for a bit, because I feel like that is probably the best way to preface this story is, talking about how it came to be.
Yeah.
It was never intended to exist.
Well, yeah. So, originally, Audrey only ever wrote the first 3 stories that are in this book. So, Edward's Day Out, Edward and Gordon, and Sad Story of Henry. And he originally didn't have any intention of publishing it at all. He basically just wrote them down so that way he could recount them properly every night to his son, because he was a huge stickler for how things go in the story. So if Audrey tried to, spice anything up, he'd be like, what? No, that's not part of the story. What the hell?
Rule 55. He can't do it.
This is the thing. I mean, mood, though, Chrissy boy. I feel that.
Yeah. I understand. I feel like that is a very, I don't want to say childish, but that does kind of, that tracks. So again, Audrey wasn't originally planning on publishing the stories, but his wife persuaded him to get them published because she was like, no, these are good. You should do that. So he went to the publishing company of one Franklin Edmund Ward, who he published books. So he went to Ward and he was like, hey, can I get my stories published? And he was like, okay, this is pretty good, but we want you to add another story onto the book because we want it to be longer. You know, maybe you could bring Edward, Gordon, and Henry together, you know. So,
I think it wasn't necessarily that they wanted it. I at least had never heard they wanted it to be longer. I had just heard that they wanted a story where Edward, Gordon, and Henry all are together, and like Henry is with the other two.
On the wiki, it says that Edward, Gordon, and Henry being brought together was just a suggestion, but the main reason is because they wanted to increase the length of the book. Which is, fair.
Huh.
Only 3 short stories I feel like would have been a bit bare bones.
Huh.
Yeah.
Never actually knew that.
Yeah, it's, I feel like this podcast is going to be very fun to do just because there's kind of like 2 or 3, like, ongoing narratives to, like, the entire Railway series. So obviously there's the narrative of the books, like, just as you, like, read them and just them. And then there's the narrative that you can extrapolate together by, like, looking at the lore books and, like, putting together the more accurate timeline. And then there's, like, the meta narrative, which is, like, the story of how these stories came to be, what inspired Audrey, why certain things in the stories are the way they are. Like, why they're the way they are because of, like, what was going through Audrey's head, as opposed to why things are the way they are because of, like, in-universe things that happen.
And then there's the one that we all know and love, the fuck Dalby narrative, that took, like, 20 years.
That's part of the meta narrative. It's a huge part of it, honestly.
I hate Dalby so much, honestly.
I just say, like, I like Dalby, I just find it hilarious that Audrey used an entire page in his final book to make fun of Dalby's illustrations of Percy.
Yeah, like, that... God, I don't remember, like, who said it, but I'm pretty sure some, like, video documenting, like, the differences between the TV and Railway series, like, they talked about it, and then, like, the commentary on it was basically just, this is proof that history is written by the victors.
I don't get it, because, like, early Railway series Percy looks cute.
The issue with him is the saddle tank.
Yeah, there's...
Wait, what, that it's, like, curved round?
The thing with it is, like, saddle tanks that go all the way around the boiler like that don't actually exist, because it completely blocks, and like, access to, the boiler and the internal motion, and Audrey said it made him look like a green caterpillar. So that's where a green caterpillar with red stripes came from in tramway engines.
Huh. I knew, like, that he didn't, like, the design, but, like, I didn't know it was because of that. I just thought it looked cute.
I think it's a neat design, but, like, there is something to be said for, like, how much it would really suck to be, like, maintaining Percy if you couldn't actually get into the internal motion.
Yeah, but it's a character design.
Well,
sorry, I'm being
real
the
fans are
TV
sticklers
series
for
bitch
these
right
things.
now.
See, this is the thing, right? I loved the, like, I went on, like, Real Life of Thomas the Tank Engine for the first time, like, properly, like, a week or so ago, and Audrey says that he partially built his model of Percy for Dalby to reference for the drawings, and Dalby just kind of ignored it.
Wow.
Wait, but even in... Oh, no, never mind. They changed his design in later stories. Never mind.
I don't know. I think Audrey's model of Percy is very handsome, honestly. Like, that is... I feel like that's the ideal shape of the character for me, but I feel like we might be getting a bit, we might need to rein in this, subplot real quick.
Dalby did nothing wrong, is my point of view. Anyway, I derailed things again, Jesus.
Dalby may have not, but you did.
So, Audrey went to the drawing board and decided, well, okay, bringing all 3 of the characters together would probably be a logical direction to take things. So, he wrote this story. And while we did talk for a while about how the sad story of Henry was kind of it was kind of a catalyst for a lot of the more negative parts of the series as a whole, I feel like this story established one of the most positive parts of the series as a whole. But we'll just have to read the story for ourselves to get into
I
that.
agree.
Yeah.
So
shall we begin?
yes, let's begin. Edward and Gordon often went through the tunnel where Henry was shut up. Edward would say, "Beep beep, hello," and Gordon would say, "Poop poop poop, serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out. Soot and dirt from the tunnel roof had spoiled his lovely green paint and red stripes. He was cold and unhappy, and wanted to come out and pull trains too. Gordon always pulled the express. He was proud of being the only engine strong enough to do it. Like, that is the end of the page, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks very strange in the book.
Yeah, like, you can clearly tell that line is meant to be on the next page where there's this big illustration of Gordon pulling the express, but like for some reason it's just kind of lumped onto this page about how Henry feels sad.
I
Which,
just want to say, Henry looks fucking miserable.
Dude,
Yeah.
he's been locked up for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Or a year at least, of course he is.
So like, speaking of the
Also-
year metric, I looked up the timeline again, because I have my own document of the timeline written down for myself as reference, because I'm a nerd. So, Sad Story of Henry takes place in 1922, and the rest of the stories in this book take place in 1923. So, it might not have been a full year that he was in there, but, like, it was still long enough for a year to have passed, so... Yeah.
Also, Henry has no lining in this illustration, and 0 out of 10 would not read again.
Yeah, he kind of looks like
God damn it, Dalby.
For some reason, it makes me think of the Golden Bear toy.
See, Mari, this
kind
is
of
what
like
Dalby
that.
did. This is what Dalby did wrong.
That's why Dalby is irredeemable in the eyes of God.
I didn't say his artwork
But
is
you know what's,
perfect. It's just like I like his style and designs.
I feel like there is something to be said for his style. You know, it is definitely an improvement over, you know, the war crime that was Middleton.
Our good old Willie Mids.
Yeah.
This is off topic, but because it's at the top of the book, or like the page where like it says Edward would say hello, they spell hello with a U in this book, like always, and I don't know if that's just like a normal British thing or something, but it's like it was always really weird to me when I was younger.
I think that's just an alternate spelling in, like, some
Yeah,
places.
that's like it's like an old-timey, I think, kind of more working class spelling, generally.
Yeah. There are a lot of, like, bits and pieces of language that Audrey uses in the books that are, like, probably intentionally old-timey, just, you know, because I guess he thought that kind of grammar would work better. I don't know. We'll talk more about that later, I guess, but, you know.
These books significantly boosted my vocabulary when I was a kid.
Yeah, they did. There's a lot of interesting words in here, like, I can't think of any off the top. Resource, sagacity,
Deputation.
yep, deputation,
Edward says we need a masturbation.
oh
my
no.
god.
You know what really bothers me about this first page isn't really just the page itself, but more just that, like, you know, the fact that they included it into the TV version of Sad Story of Henry. The story in the book is done at about, like, you know, 3 minutes in, and then there's just, like, an extra minute of just seeing Henry sat in the tunnel while, like, Edward and Henry just kind of pass him by, and it just makes it even more depressing in that version. Because
Yeah.
it's, like... Yeah, they just dwell on it for so long. It's weird.
I'm guessing it's...
I have noticed a goof.
Oh no, what is the hashtag goof?
Edward's tender has no buffers. Goof.
Oh man,
That's a goof!
man. Imagine if someone at the time had, like, mailed in a question to Audrey about it, and then he had to include that in the lore book somewhere.
His
I
tender was
think
being...
if I had a time machine, I would... I think if I had a time machine, I think I would go back in time to, like, when Audrey was writing, and then just
And
dedicate
ask
the
him
rest of my life
increasingly
to, like,
arbitrary questions.
yeah, just make, like, coming up with different pen names to, like, send Audrey arbitrary questions about illustration errors.
Oh God.
Oh.
God. I do with the TV adaptation, I'm guessing that's because there wasn't enough in the last story to make it last the whole 4 minutes, because like Sad Story of Henry is a very short story, whereas this has a lot more going on to actually fill 4 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we did touch on that last episode. It looks longer than it is just because 2 of the pages are just, like, a couple lines. But this, canonically, this is the first time that Edward and Gordon and Henry, and by extension the Fat Director, coexist within the same universe.
Edward allowed them to meet, finally.
God. It is interesting that, like, the other 3 stories were written without, like, this in mind.
Yeah.
But, like, they were meant to be disconnected, which is still just weird to think about, especially since Edward carries over into the second story.
Yeah. I think the situation might have been less that, like, Audrey had intended for these to be 2 separate universes, and more that, like, Audrey just hadn't thought to make them all interact with each other. Maybe if we lived in an alternate universe where, Christopher had asked Audrey, hey, what do Edward and Gordon think of Henry? Have they ever met? Audrey might have written the story.
Yeah.
Like, without the publisher even needing to prompt him.
I
See, this
see
is the
that.
thing. Imagine, like, kid Christopher having known these stories for, like, 2-3 years, and then suddenly your dad just comes home with a new story about how Henry was let out, and you're just like, what the fuck?
The lore.
Cool.
Just imagining Christopher Audrey being the ultimate Railway Series purist, like, the most true form of Railway Series purist, where, like, only the first 3 stories are good and right. Everything else is a sin.
Except for anything involving Toby, because Toby's his favorite, apparently.
Dalby's biggest problem was he didn't give everyone Westinghouse pumps. Shall we continue?
Yeah, I think we've taken all that we can out of this page.
I think we've taken more than we can out of this page.
There were many heavy coaches, full of important people like the Fat Director who had punished Henry. Gordon was seeing how fast he could go. Hurry, 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 he panted. Trickety-truck, 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 said the coaches. Gordon could see Henry's tunnel in front. In a minute, he thought, I'll poop, poop, poop at Henry, and rush through and out into the open again. Closer and closer he came. He was almost there, when crack! Whee! Whee! He was in a cloud of steam, and going slower and slower.
Gordon said poop.
Yeah, let's get that out of our systems. Haha,
So,
funny.
a few things. I have nothing of substance to add to this page besides the fact that in, like, the Railway Series narration version, which I listened to, like, before the podcast, because I, like, try and do that, the, like, coach noises, I swear he says Baba Booey at one point. Like, it's just all, like, random noises.
It's just the guy, like, getting his finger and just going, like, blub, 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 blub.
And also, Gordon's talking about how he'll poop at Henry, rush through, and out, and, he comes closer and closer, and then something goes wrong when he was almost there.
I don't like where this is going.
So yeah, I have nothing of substance to add. Those are just all sentences I think the world should have to think about.
Yeah.
I have discovered an additional goof.
Oh no. What is it?
So Gordon is pulling the express, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you aware of what the express train head code is?
Oh no, he has the wrong head code.
Christ.
He doesn't have enough lamps.
He does. He only has the one lamp. What
See,
will he
this is-
do?
Wait, he has a
This-
lamp? I didn't even realize he had a lamp.
It's on
It's
his
a very
very
it's
left.
a very small lamp.
Yeah. But like this, I think this is the only time where Big World Big Adventures has been more railway accurate than the Railway series, because Gordon has a permanent express head code in season 23 onwards.
Which was like the only like model change that I thought was actually good.
Yeah, that was fine.
I mean, it was good that they resized James so he isn't as fucking huge anymore.
Did they actually resize James? I didn't notice.
I think they made him a bit smaller.
Maybe.
He's like less.
They've made him a bit smaller like 3 times at this point.
They just can't. They can't make him small enough.
He's
Well,
too
they
powerful.
won't make him small enough now because there's no more CGI series.
It's too much gay
he's
energy.
still gonna be fucking massive in like the terrible 2D reboot. He's
Oh,
just gonna be like 10 miles long.
God, now that we've spoken it into existence, it's bound to happen.
I can't wait for Breakdown Crane Carly, where it's just her walking.
Oh no. Something I just noticed reading this. I didn't have any notes on this page at first, just because of how unimportant it seemed. This is the first time the coaches. Oh wait, no, they talked in the first story. This is the first time they like say Baba Booey words, I guess.
Which
Gordon's
becomes
face
like
is big.
almost the only thing coaches do in the Railway series.
Yeah.
By virtue, most of the female characters.
Yeah, like I didn't know when I was gonna talk about like the coaches and gender in general, but like the coaches don't have any defined gender in like the first few stories, even though every named coach we do meet ends up being female or having a female name.
Thinking about it, I think the only time that like we ever have a truck referred to with specific like gendered pronouns is Scruffy.
Yeah. I don't know if I really wanted to get into like the gender politics of the Railway series just yet, because I feel like when
That
we
is a
get to that,
fucking
I want to
loaded
have something written
discussion.
down and not just like say whatever comes off the top of my head. But
Like Jamie fucking slams down like a massive book of shit she has to say.
Oh no,
God.
that's what I have.
Yeah.
I'll save that for when we get to talk about how nothing of characters Annie and Clarabelle were in the Railway series.
That's a story for another day.
Mari, they're incredibly intricate characters. Didn't you know Annie can only take passengers, but Clarabelle can take passengers' luggage and the guard? And that's the closest thing to a personality they fucking have.
If you want a good version of what the Railway series should have done with Annie and Clarabelle, read Thomas, Annie and Clarabelle by Dawn. I'll probably like go into the YouTube video and like put this in the comments, but like read it. It's really good. It's an adaptation of Thomas and the Guard, but like good, and it's
Yeah.
amazing,
But-
and I love it.
but-
Anyway,
But can she take passengers' luggage and the guard?
Well, like I think that is definitely one of the best parts of the Brenner era compared to the Railway series. Like one of the like aspects where it really shines, like, in comparison to the books, is that Annie and Clarabelle are actual characters.
oh god, yeah, and they're amazing characters.
Yeah, they're utilized really well. But, that again, that's for when we actually, we can elaborate more on that when we get to Annie and Clarabelle.
I guess to tie it back into this book, I'm pretty sure this is the only story in this book to not be referenced at all in The Adventure Begins.
There is like a
well,
throwaway
no.
line where Edward's like, "Oh, they let Henry out eventually when Gordon burst the safety valve," but then Gordon's like, "No, that didn't happen. Shut up."
Fake
Yeah.
news.
It's
The
I
lying
did
media
like
is
that
trying to
scene.
censor me.
God.
You left us in the middle of nowhere. We were at Marin.
In the middle of nowhere. Shall we continue? This page is really nothing.
We shall.
Well, what I wanted to, I also wanted to say that I think the Trickety Trucks are cute, and like I don't think Johnny Morris realized that it was supposed to be like the clickety clack sound that like is
Yeah, which
associated with
can I just
trains
say,
going over
I think
rails.
it's really cute when Audrey characterizes the sounds that engines make as things the engines and the coaches and stuff are saying.
Yeah, I
Aw,
think that's cute.
yeah.
Nope.
Because that's what obviously what the peep peeps and the poop poops are.
Hurry, hurry, panted Gordon. Baba booey, said the coaches.
Funny meme noise. Let's go to the next page. His driver stopped the train. "What has happened to me?" asked Gordon. "I feel so weak." "You've burst your safety valve," said the driver. "You can't pull the train anymore." "Oh dear," said Gordon. "We were going so nicely too. Look at Henry laughing at me." Gordon made a face at Henry and blew smoke at him. Everybody got out and came to see Gordon. "Huh," said the fat director. "I never liked these big engines. Always going wrong. Send for another engine at once."
Gordon had to have blown smoke pretty far for it to have hit Henry.
Yeah, he's like a mile away in this illustration.
And see, this is the thing. This is another reason why Dalby has no rights.
I do like the idea that Henry is laughing at Gordon. Just, I wish we could properly see it like we do in the TV series. Just like see Henry cackling in the distance.
And there's like the little sound effect.
Yeah. Like just. I'm just imagining if like Kenny had illustrated this story and like you could just see Henry in the distance with this fucking like, guffawing troublesome truck face that he liked to draw.
God.
Kenny and the Governors, probably the Governors are my favorite Railway Series illustrators.
Kenny is my favorite. The Governors are very I think it's actually Gunver or oh wait no, it's Edwards because Gunver is the wife's name.
Oh yeah, right.
So it's the Edwards. Oops. I like the Edwards work, but some of the color and detail choices are a bit weird. I don't quite know how to say it. I guess I'll elaborate whenever we get to those illustrations. But I really like Kenny's work out of all of them because it looks like a more refined and locomotive accurate version of Dalby.
Don't know what it says, but when I picture the Railway series, I usually picture Dalby, and that's probably just partially because it's a major influence for the TV series designs.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, it's absolutely that, and it's at least for me, most of the Railway series stories I did have were from the time where Dalby was illustrating. So those are the ones that I have the most memories of.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
So
those tend to be the ones that get the most press.
This is the thing, me and Jamie are making fun of him. I fucking love Dalby's illustrations.
Yeah, they're flawed, but they're still pretty good.
Yeah.
He definitely makes a lot of mistakes, but yeah I agree.
My biggest issue with him is honestly his attitude towards the books.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. I guess that's all we have to say about this page.
Yeah,
it's not too interesting.
All right. Well, let's keep going then. The only engine left in the shed was Edward. "I'll come and try," he said. Gordon saw him coming. "That's no use," he said. "Edward can't pull the train." Edward puffed and pulled and pulled and puffed, but he couldn't move the heavy coaches. "I told you so," said Gordon rudely. "Why not let Henry try?" "Yes," said the fat director, "I will."
it turns out it was a really, really bad idea to let Edward's Thanos snap 9846287 whatever the fuck and Eagle away. They really could have used them.
Yeah, unfortunately, disintegrating them and removing them from canon. Unfortunately, doing that drained Edward of all his powers, so now he's not as OP anymore. It's real unfortunate.
Shit,
it's like a Dungeons and Dragons thing where Edward only gets to use his powers once a day.
Ah, okay. I see.
Also, Edward is on a fucking mission. Look at his face.
So hard.
He is fucking putting his all into this.
I feel like if this was an Edward story, he'd have done it.
Yeah.
That's what the story would be about.
He absolutely would have.
Yeah.
And it would have been a good story. I fucking love those stories where basically, even if all of them are basically just Edward going, "Eat shit," I fucking love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, like, even in, like, Gordon's, like, ha, like, he couldn't do it, and, like, being amused at it, like, he's the one that suggests Henry try it, and, like, even if it is, like, meant to be, like, kind of, like, a dismissive thing, like, it's kind of sweet that, like, he's the one that, like, actually gets him out of the tunnel, and, like, gives the idea of, like, you know, there's another engine right there. Like,
Yeah.
even if he was, like, annoyed at him, like, laughing at him, and it's like, I like to still think it's, like, a, supposed to be, like, a he still cares about him thing, and it's probably looking way too much into a little moment, but it's like...
Well, this is the thing. This is a very good, I guess, like, I guess, like, forward, for lack of a better word, on Gordon's personality. Because
Yeah.
he's a pompous dick, but he also, like, he cares about everyone, and he, like,
Yeah.
and, like, he's like a good friend, even if he's, like, a little bit of an asshole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's arrogant and, like, pompous, like he said, but, like, he does care about the others, and, like, doesn't, like, actually hate everyone.
Yeah. The way I've tended to view this line is that, it's meant to be dismissive of Edward in, like, sort of a, you can't even do it. The guy who's bricked up in the tunnel and can't even move could do a better job. But then that still, like, indirectly inspires the fact director to, like, give Henry another shot and forgive him. So,
Yeah.
Even if that is a bit less, I know that doesn't jar with you guys' interpretation, but I still feel like it's
No,
still...
it's still valid, and, like, honestly,
Yeah.
that probably is, like, what the intention is and everything, and it's, like, it's still, like, sweet in a way. Like,
Yeah.
even in, like, his, like, pompous shittery, like, he ends up being the one
Yeah.
that saves Henry.
Like, no matter how you read the line, it's still Gordon who is, the catalyst for Henry being let out of the tunnel, and I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Will you help pull this train, Henry? He asked. Yes, said Henry at once. So Gordon's driver and fireman lit his fire. Some plate layers broke down the wall and put back the rails, and when he had steam up, Henry puffed out. He was dirty, his boiler was black, he was covered with cobwebs. Oh, I'm so stiff, oh, I'm so stiff, he groaned. You'd better have a run to ease your joints, and find a turntable, said the fat director kindly.
Henry said the funny word.
He sure did. He
Yeah, he said, oh.
Oh, I'm stiff. Oh, I'm stiff. Wiggles eyebrows
Also,
seductively.
The fact
Also,
the fact director is being kind to him now because he kind of realizes he committed a fucking kind of, like, abuse of a living creature, and is now releasing him solely because he needs help, because he realized that locking one of your engines up in a fucking tunnel probably isn't the best business move.
Yeah, Henry has come out of his tunnel to shame mankind.
So I have two things to say about this page. The first one is, Henry has lost a pair of trailing wheels since he went into the tunnel.
They rusted away, and they will variably return whenever they feel like it.
Yes.
Hey, did he have
the second... What'd you say, Mike?
Did he have, like, Gordon back wheels in the last story?
Yeah, he had a pair of trailing wheels in, like, the first couple illustrations. Though Henry's wheel configuration has always been up in the air, just because of, like, how inconsistent the illustrations are.
Mainly because of Dalby.
Part of why Henry got his rebuild, but we can discuss this later.
So the second one is, I feel like by the time it would take, like, 3 plate layers to knock down a brick wall and reinstall a set of railway line, it would have taken, like, 2 days and everybody on the train would have starved to death.
Maybe they just worked really fast, They're like the workmen in the steamworks or whatever.
It takes 30 days to starve to death. It takes 2 days to die of dehydration.
See, now this is where we find out. This is where we find out that the railway actually has Sonic the Hedgehog as a plate layer, and he just got everything done really quickly.
Couldn't they have just pulled him out of the back of the tunnel?
I mean,
that's what they do in the TV series.
Yeah, like, unless they built a wall and took up the rails in the back of the tunnel too, which would have been a bit overkill.
They could have just had Edward go around and like.
Why did they even brick him up? Couldn't they have just not moved him?
We covered this last time. This is a very unrealistic and uneconomic way of punishing your engine.
Sad story of Henry is a shit story that never should have happened, and this story is basically damage control. What? I didn't say that.
Well, I feel like now that Henry's out of the tunnel, I feel like this is the right time to talk about something that I really wanted to talk about in regards to the story, and that, in the same way that the last few stories have established the base elements of the series, I feel like this establishes another very important base element of the series, and that is forgiveness. So, in the first story, we get the basic, tone of the series. In the second story, we start getting insight into how, character interactions will generally go. And in the last story, we saw, where a lot of the flaws of the series would come from. But, this story really establishes that even if some of the characters fucked up, we're willing to forgive and forget. Christopher Audrey says this really well in an interview. And I think I'm just gonna, kind of read this quote a little bit. The way it's worded doesn't quite work well as, its own statement, but it whenever Audrey would write his stories, generally they were along, the very black and white lines of the good is rewarded and the bad is the punished. But Audrey always added the writer that forgiveness is rewarded as well. When Gordon, Henry, and James go on strike, eventually the big engines come to their senses and say they're sorry for being difficult. And then they're allowed to come out and do their duties again, as if nothing happened. The bad is forgotten. So, even when the characters do something that is, not good and get punished for it, there is always a chance that they'll be able to redeem themselves. And, people on Sodor, for the most part, are willing to forgive and forget. And I think that is a very important part of the series, that, you should be able to forgive people. And, yeah.
Haven't
unless they're Stanley or Scruffy or Bulgy.
Unless you're one of them, yeah. Admittedly, really it's not perfect given that those examples exist within the series, but I still feel like it's important. It is still important that they address that. You need to be forgiven for things. You should be willing to forgive.
Ultimately, all the engines are, for lack of a better word, good people, and it's an important thing is that they care about each other and they own up to when they fuck up, which is kind of an important thing to do, and it's sweet. I like it.
Yeah.
But important question though, have you seen the season 24 episode of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends Sunny's Second Chance?
Oh no!
I love that the only time the fandom takes the series' messages to heart is when trying to defend complete bigots or worse because they made some cool models. Anyway, going back off the rails, I completely agree with what you were saying, and it
and if I may say as an aside to go on a little tangent real quick, I just paraphrased a bit that Christopher Audrey said in an interview that he did on a radio show for I think it was to promote the 42nd book of the Railway series, Thomas and His Friends. That he talked about that on the radio, and whenever I go back and listen to a lot of Christopher Audrey's interviews as reference and such, they are kind of upsetting in a way, because whenever I listen to them, I always get the feel that he really does understand the basic concepts of Thomas, because why wouldn't he? He was there while they were being written. He's the reason that they exist. You understand that he understands, but then when you read his stories, they kind of don't exhibit a lot of that, and it's very strange and kind of sad in a way.
I guess it's kind of a case of weird comparison, but basically exactly like the reboot article on Sif where he just didn't say what the guy that they were quoting in the Sif article did, where it's like he mentions in like multiple ways like a very very clear understanding of the franchise, what makes it what it is, and what makes it work, what makes it appealing, what's made it long lasting, and then it's like, but we're not going to do that because we want to do something different for a different audience, which totally isn't incredibly yikes. But
Yeah, we're trying to appeal to this audience that doesn't exist, and we're going to, describe it by saying, hey, remember all those things that are, like, good and made this franchise long-lasting? Yeah, we're just throwing all those the fuck out the window,
Fuck our neurodivergent audience.
Thomas is a new graduate of the Train Academy, and he's gonna start jumping over minecarts. Like, obviously, I feel like those lines weren't meant to be taken, like, super literally, but they're still...
No, I think they were. Like the jumping over minecart definitely was.
Like, jumping over minecarts, yeah, probably, but, like, I feel like describing Thomas as, like, a new graduate of the Train Academy was less, like, them saying the premise and more, like, trying to establish a feel, which I feel like isn't... It's not wrong, it's just not very, what's the right word? It's not very encouraging.
Liv, what were you saying?
Like, I just, like, the main takeaway I got from that article was just, fuck our neurodivergent fans.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that.
Yeah, which is why it's incredibly fucking yikes, that whole thing. But
yeah.
I guess the point I wanted to make was that I think it's kind of a case where it's like Chris knew what the series was and like what made it popular and stuff. It's just I don't think it was the kind of stories he wanted to write. He wanted to write basically about railways, not about Thomas and like its characters. And I'm not gonna say that's not valid, but I think it's a very bad choice for the series, and I mean, in general, you know how clueless I am with like any railway stuff, but it's like I feel like it's why when you prioritize like the realism aspect, it doesn't work well for the series. Like over everything else, I should say.
I feel like the reason that Chris's like realistic stories don't work when Audrey stories tend to work is because Audrey usually tends to like humanize a lot of the like the intricate railway workings. Like, Christopher Audrey in his stories would just like, explain what a thing is, and then, something with the thing happens, and then that's it. Whereas Audrey would try and like, build the story around it in a way that was like interesting. And I feel like that's I feel like realism in Thomas is both part of why it works and part of why it can't work. Because when it feels real, it feels like a genuine story that is, like, fun to partake in. Whereas when it's, just real in that, it's basically just, procedurally generated locomotive happenings, like in the Chris stories, it's not as fun anymore.
Some of my absolute favorite Thomas stories are based around, like, you could simplify it down to a train thing happens, but Audrey can't, like, contextualizes it as the character doing something.
Yeah, it pretty much just hinges on, like, how much you want to write the engines as, like, characters, as opposed to just as, like, interchangeable iron horses.
This is, like a random example, it's just the one that came to mind. I think it's, like, Passengers and Polish, the one where Duncan's like, no, I'm gonna fucking stay on the bridge. Like, you could, if Chris wrote that, it would be Duncan has low boiler pressure and has nothing to do with him being pissed off. But with Audrey, it's like, no, Duncan's just being a dick and he doesn't want to move.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like, tying back to this story, it's like, I guess aside from Gordon bursting his safety valve and needing another engine is like a realistic thing, it's driven entirely by the characters and nothing inherently real. Like, it's about the three like engines, Henry and Gordon in particular, but like it's about like Henry's kind of redeeming himself and like Gordon coming to respect him and Edward kind of like showing what he did in like
Edward's just
Edward
kind
and
of there.
Gordon. Yeah, but like it does like he does kind of reestablish like what he had in Edward and Gordon, where he does like work to get the job done and
Yeah.
everything. And it's like it's entirely, it's not a story based on, I like, well, there probably was maybe some real incident that like partially inspired this, but it's like that's not abundantly clear.
Yeah, it is largely
Which
character driven.
Which is something that I think is true with most of Audrey's stories. It's like, obviously, like a lot of the fans know this is based on this or this is based on that, but like you wouldn't know that like Oliver dipshitting himself into the turntable well is based on something, or like, you wouldn't
Wait,
know
it
that
was?
Dan's mind. Yeah, it was based on one of Boko's class just shitting itself into a turntable.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you told me about that. I forgot.
And it's like, you wouldn't know that Down the Mine is based on like a furnace railway engine if you're just reading the story.
It's all about writing characters and not interchangeable iron horses.
The furnace railway is real. I thought it was just like the railway that like appears in backstories where they're like, oh, Edward was from here and like Alfred or Albert or whatever the fuck the character in Thomas and Victoria is from.
That's because that's where the basis locomotive comes from, maybe.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Edward is a furnace railway larger seagull.
Maybe. It's,
I didn't know it was a real railway. I thought it was just like a weird bit of lore.
Can I be honest? I thought you were going to say I thought it was the railway in Stories of Sodor.
Oh, God. Did they reference Furnace Railway in Stories of Sodor?
Yeah, there's a whole episode about how it
remember.
closed because of, like... God, I can't even remember what the fuck happens. I think there's a strike somewhere in there.
There's probably a lot of bootlicking.
There were only 3 engines with faces, and then the government just so happened to buy up all the extra engine stock and turn it into a fire and rescue service, just so Victor Tanzig can justify having the fire and rescue loco be in Furnace Railway livery, because, hey, it works for that, too.
So, yes, Marina, dearest, the Furnace Railway was real, and it was the railway that served, I believe, the immediate area around Barrow and Furnace.
Yeah.
Which is
Barrow
why
and
Edward
Furnace
went
is
to
real?
Sodor.
Yeah,
I thought it was on Sodor. How does this...
No, Barrow is like the first station on the mainland. The entire thing with Barrow is like Audrey just changed the location that a bridge goes to, and that's how you get to Sodor.
Wasn't Barrow the place Percy was at the beginning of Percy Takes the Plunge?
Yeah, and
Why was he chilling on the mainland?
Because that's where the main line
Percy
ends there.
It says, I listened to the story just like yesterday. It says sometimes Percy takes stone trucks to the other end of the line.
I thought Vickerstown was the end of the main line.
They made it that in the TV series. It's complicated. That I feel like we're getting very off track and we're destroying
we've been on
your
this
brain.
page for like 20 minutes.
I feel like for Mari's sake, we should get back to the story.
Yeah, my everything is. I'm the same as I was in episode 2 now. Honestly,
Marina's like fucking worldview collapses. Number 2.
Yeah.
I preferred when I got to completely tear stuff apart. Let's go on.
So Mari, like, just for future reference, are there any other weird things with the Railway series I should know about you?
We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't think we'll
Let's
be
be
able to know in
honest.
advance. We'll just, be talking about something matter-of-factly, and Mari will be like, what the fuck, that's real?
Yeah. And just imagining, like, we're just talking about, like, James, and she's like, what the fuck? James is real?
Wait, Britain's a real place? You never told me
Fishing village.
We're not getting into that again. Can we get to
We've heard the story once.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, next page. Henry came back feeling better, and they put him in front. Peep, peep, said Edward. I'm ready. Peep, 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 said Henry. So am I. Pull hard, pull hard, pull hard, puffed Edward. We'll do it, we'll do it, we'll do it, puffed Henry. Pull hard, we'll do it, pull hard, we'll do it, pull hard, we'll do it, they puffed together. The heavy coaches began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster. We've done it together, we've done it together, said Edward and Henry. You've done it, hooray, you've done it, hooray, you've done it, hooray, sang the coaches.
I don't really have much of substance to add with this page, so, like, after these things, I'm probably good to move on, but, like, first, like, I just find this cute with, like, them, like, working together and, like, the coaches kind of, like, cheering them on.
Yeah,
like, it's sweet.
Yeah, it's more of that, like, I think Liv talked about it last time, where, like, the engine talk, where they kind of, like, you know,
Yeah.
they kind of repeat what they're saying in a rhythm, you know, and,
Yeah.
I do
Yeah, that's
really like
nice.
how they, like, say their things together here when they, like, are working together and start to pull the train.
Yeah, like, they're different statements, like, fused together, and it's cute. And, like,
Yeah.
Edward and Henry make a pretty good pair. I like it. Like, Edward's the
Yeah.
kind of, like, he's, like...
Edward Henry, what a pair. Toby, like I say, he's
You know,
square.
they're
God.
working together, huff and puff, through all sorts of weather. Edward pushes at the back, helping Henry up the track. Working. God, I always hated that song just because of how repetitive it was.
Working together.
But,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think Edward and Henry make, like, a fun pair, because, like, I didn't really think about this till now, but it's... Or, like, when we were reading this page, but it's, like, they are, like, kind of, like, interesting opposites, in that Edward's, like, small, and, like, obviously weaker than, or less strong than an engine like, say, Gordon or Henry, but, like, he has a very strong willpower and doesn't doubt himself. Whereas Henry's kind of the opposite, where he is very strong, but he lacks the... I
He's
guess
more
emotional strength isn't the right word, but he's less
he's
confident.
he's more pessimistic and like, especially now he's unconfident in his
Yeah.
abilities.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Really locked him up for a year. But, like, yeah, I think it works, like, really well, and I like that they paired them together to
Yeah.
end the book.
You know,
Do you
and
think
then
they
they
ever gave
paired them
Henry
together when they threw them
compensation?
into the ether for Big World Big Adventures.
Do you think they ever gave Henry, like, obviously not monetary compensation, but, like, compensation for the fucking bullshit he went through?
I mean, they repaint him into like a couple pages.
I mean, yeah, but is that really, like, sufficient, like, apology for, sorry we locked you in a hole for a year?
The Fat Controller doesn't even apologize. It's just like, you did work for me.
Yeah,
I'm glad you learned your place, Henry.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's all we really have to say about this page. All the passengers were excited. The Fat Controller leaned out the window to wave to Edward and Henry, but the train was going so fast that his hat blew off into a field where a goat ate it for his tea. That can't be healthy.
My fucking hat, shit!
They never stopped till they came to the big station at the end of the line. The passengers all got out and said thank you, and the fat director promised Henry a new coat of paint. Would you like red and blue? Or, you know, blue and yellow, I guess, in the original version.
Oh yes, sir. I love the early Pokemon games.
Yes, please, said Henry. Then I'll be like Edward. So I feel like Henry getting repainted blue is a really, really good symbolic gesture. Like, you know, just because of, like, not only because of the symbolism of like him wanting to be like his new friend Edward, but like also because he is willingly shedding himself of the thing that he like was so vain and petty over. So like it's a new start for Henry. He's changed himself. Like this is proof that Henry is, going to be a better person going forward.
Yeah.
Asterisk because because there were more books after this, they kind of had to roll this back for Henry to be interesting. And also just having Henry, who is designed very similarly to Gordon, having the same color as Gordon as well, that didn't really work well in terms of being able to tell them apart. And then there was even more illustration errors, so basically all of this got rolled back at the beginning of Troublesome Engines. But I like, it's the thought that counts.
I like how inconsequential it makes Henry going into green again seem. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think it's just at the beginning of, I think it's Henry and the Elephant, where it's like, oh, he even gave them new coats of paint. Henry chose green.
I think, like, I never actually thought of, like, the symbolism before you mentioned it, and I really like that, and especially that, like, he outright, like, mentions that he wants to be like Edward, and it's, like, I think it's really sweet, and, like, it makes me like the blue livery more, which I was always, like, I never disliked it, but I was never really, like, I never really cared all that much about it, I guess.
Yeah,
But
it's easy to not care about it just because, like, it only appears in a few books and then it gets rolled back as if it, like, never happened.
I remember being, like, aware of it as a kid, but never really, like, thinking about it.
I had the wooden toy.
Yeah, I had that too. I feel
really
like
cool.
I feel like Blue Henry would have been a lot better if they hadn't rolled it back, and instead they had like kept him blue up until his crash in Henry the Green Engine, and then when he comes back from the works, he's green again. So it's kind of like it
Reborn.
So like it's he's being reborn again, but back into green. So it's kind of like both times he changes color, it's because he has some kind of like reawakening or rebirth or whatever.
Henry becomes a born again Christian. I'm so sorry for you, Henry. But
can I just point out, like, obviously this wasn't like, I guess it was intended. I find it fucking hilarious to imagine that at the time that James is repainted into red, the railway just has a completely uniform blue livery, and then James just comes back from the works like, "What's up, bitches?"
yeah, explicitly because he has the gold dome too. James, honestly, like, I feel like that just kind of adds to James' character.
Yeah,
and
just the fact this railway just has this uniform blue color. And then when the fat director is like, okay, you just had a bad time. As a little treat, we're going to give you, special colors. And then James just ends up coming out of the works as gaudy as possible, and that just entirely reshapes who he is.
I always love the idea that, like, the engines get to pick their colors, and, like, James, like, absolutely would pick that. And
yeah.
It's like, I think the only time they mention that is, I think with Toby, because the Fat Controller's like, oh, would you like the blue side plates? And he's like, oh yes, I'd like that very much.
And also, in the Twin Engines, when he asks the Caledonian twins what colors they'd like, and they'd be like, oh, we want blue. Like, I think it's very nice that, despite all the shit the Fact Director is, despite all the fucking war crimes he does in these early books, he is still fairly, he's still a little bit considerate of the engines. He at least lets them express themselves through fashion.
I do have to say one thing with the the Blue Henry thing is that it does very much seem like the kind of thing that was made with the intention that there would only be one book.
Yeah.
I guess. Like that, like, afterwards they introduced Thomas, who, like, obviously I'm glad he has the design he did, but, like, it's, like, every engine is the same color and everything, and it's, like, I do think, like, with, like, a long-running series, that kinda could, like, present an issue, which is probably why it was rolled back
Yeah.
pretty quickly. But
I
like
think that's also probably the reason that they never put Donald Douglas into blue in the show.
Yeah.
yeah, or Henry.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the Fat Controller losing his hat?
Oh yeah, that's a great bit.
Yeah. Like, first of all, the
I'll
goat
eat
eating it
my hat.
like that can't be healthy. But also, I think it's like this is kind of a comeuppance for the Fat director a little bit after like all the shit he pulled in the previous story. Like, you know,
fucking shit.
he does
director.
mostly get his way, you know, kind of, and doesn't really apologize, which is kind of fucked up. But at the same time, his dignity is taken away from him when his hat flies off and a goat fucking eats it. Like,
Can I just, like, this is, like, kind of related. One of my favorite moments in, like, season 5 is the, oh, well, it seems I wouldn't be able to eat my hat even if I had to.
Yeah. I want to finish?
yeah, I feel like we're ready to move on to the last page now. Edward and Henry went home quietly, and on their way they helped Gordon back to the shed. All three engines are now great friends. Wasn't Henry pleased when he had his new coat? He's very proud of it, as all good engines are. But he doesn't mind the rain now, because he knows that the best way to keep his paint nice is not to run into tunnels, but to ask his driver to rub him down when the day's work is over.
Henry likes getting a good
Nope,
rub down.
Nope, okay. So,
And
going back to the whole forgiveness thing that I was prattling on about earlier, that shows up again here. Like, you know, Gordon is, you know, he was a huge asshole to Edward. He was, you know, not that very nice to Henry when he was going to poop at him. But they still go back and take him back home. And, you know, that's the forgiveness again. So I like that it is reinforced here.
I love that it ends with, like, all three of the engines together, and, like, you see, like, even Gordon is, like, there and happy. And, like, it's cute. I think it's the perfect, like, ending for the book, and overall I think it's the perfect start to what Thomas would become.
Yeah.
Because I was incredibly negative on the last story, but I do, and like I kind of joked about this being damage control earlier, but it's like this does like pretty much take
It's good damage control.
yeah. Like it pretty much takes what like I think is, because like I don't think Sad Story of Henry makes a very good Thomas story, but like this takes,
So it's a sad story, is what you think.
yeah, but like this takes it from its like rocky base, like makes a very sweet Thomasy story about like, for lack of a better thing, friendship and, like you said, forgiveness, and it's sweet and I really like it.
Yeah. I also do like that it reaffirms what we were talking about earlier about, like, you know, Henry changing his paint color being symbolic of how he's learned that, you know, maybe the best way to take care of your appearance isn't to, like, you know, hide in a tunnel and say, fuck the passengers.
Yeah. That made me think of kind of the last story and like the metaphor, like, it kind of, like, changes the metaphor a bit, because it becomes less of, like, the last story on its own was, which is very much a grim fairy tale-y kind of, like, don't be bad, children, or you'll end up somewhere horrible, and more of, like, you can't stay in, like, it's more of, like, a story where it's, like, oh, like, a little kid is just, like, really worried about, like, I don't know, ruining, like, their favorite pair of shoes or something. Then it's, like, they never, like, take them out of the box until, like, oh, like, you got, like, too big for them. And, like, you can't even use them anyway. And it's, like, that kind of story more, I guess. Which is, like, it makes it more of a sweeter thing than a fucked up.
I think if you look at Sad Story of Henry and this as one long story, it actually becomes a lot better.
Yeah, I feel like if this were to be, like, readapted through, like, a modern lens, I feel like a good way to do that would be to combine the two stories into one, so that way you're not forced to dwell on the implication of Sad Story of Henry for too long, and then you get a sweet conclusion to it.
Yeah. I guess it's like I guess that's part of what makes Sad Story of Henry so infamous, even when there is a rather sweet conclusion to it, is that it isn't the same story regardless, and it's
Yeah.
like yeah, it's
Like if the two stories were coupled together, then there wouldn't be nearly as much talk about it.
yeah, like I still think it'd be like a really outdated thing, but like it makes it sweeter, I guess.
Yeah,
And
it's a more complete story.
and it
If the two stories were coupled together, then Henry could pull them much more efficiently. Train joke.
Yeah.
wait, what was that a joke for? I thought it was like a
Like coupled together.
Couple.
Like couplings.
what am I thinking? I thought it was
Do you not know what a coupling
joke.
is either?
No, I know what a coupling is. I thought it was I thought it was a joke about like Edward and Henry pulling the train together or something. I didn't. I was like wondering. It's like, is there some like railway I am. Want to get on
Sorry.
to ratings? I'm dumb.
Mari, can I say something before we go on to ratings?
Of course,
I love you.
I love you too.
Gay people.
Thanks for putting up
Gay-
with me being an idiot.
Gay people. Okay,
Henry
so
and Gordon are totally gay.
Okay, moving on to ratings. I'm gonna go first just because I feel like
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
I think I give the story a Percy because it's a lot more exciting and sweet than Edward's Day Out, I feel. But I don't feel like it's as quintessential a Thomas story as Edward and Gordon, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. What do you guys think?
I was probably gonna go the same, honestly. Like, I really enjoy this story, and it was always like, I have a lot of nostalgia for like the set of stories that became season one of the TV series. Obviously, like, Sad Story of Henry was kind of problematic, but I still kind of enjoy it. And this
That's
is
valid.
like a genuinely really fun story that I also have a lot of like emotional connection to. So I'd probably go for like a 6 as well, because I just like
Oh.
I genuinely enjoy the story, and I genuinely enjoy like all the characters in it, and I think it's fun.
It's a weird judge for me because I'll start by saying I'm a Percy as well, and I agree with that rating with you girls. I think this is a bit of a weird story for me in that I think if it wasn't as tied to the last story, I might have like bumped it a bit higher. But like on its own, I really do enjoy it, and it's a sweet story, and it basically makes something I hate into a like sweet conclusion that I think is very, very Thomas, more than honestly like almost anything in this book so far. And that's not even an insult to like Edward and Gordon and stuff, because like I said in that episode, like talked a lot about how it basically forms the basis for the series. But yeah, I really enjoy this, and I wasn't fully expecting to after last episode, so yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this has very much been the opposite of last episode, where like the more we looked into it, the more we hated that story. The more we've looked into this, the more we found like reasons to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was always expecting to like it, but like I really like it. It's really sweet. And
So now that we've all rated the stories, now it's time to rate the book.
Oh
boy.
boy!
So, what would we rate this book on a scale of Thomas to Douglas? Because I feel like we could just average the scores that we've put here together and, like, you know, just parade that around, but I feel like that lacks a lot of nuance. Because, like, we have opinions about these books, so, like, you know, if we end up giving ratings that don't, like, quite make sense later on, I don't think we want to be beholden to those forever.
And I think there is a matter of like looking at things as a whole rather than necessarily like the parts, and because a work can be greater or weaker than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Which...
So, personally, I think I would give this book the same score I gave Edward's Day Out, which is a 5, on the basis that, you know, it's the middle of the road, and this is the first book that's really come out. So I feel like this story needs to be, like, you know, in the middle of the, like, score, just because, like, this is the barometer of which we will gauge every future book.
Yeah.
I was actually going to go a 5 as well, because there's two, like, stories that I really enjoy, one story that's okay, and one that's not that good, which I would say equals to, you know, roughly a 5.
Yeah. What about you, Mari?
It's a very tough situation for me because, at least like how I tend to look at a scale is a 5, or in this case a James, would be like dead in the middle, no strong feelings one way or another. Which is why I rated Edward's Day Out that, because to me, it's a very nothing story. It's not bad, and like that's why I didn't give it lower than a 5. But it also didn't have anything that made me like it, I guess, to where it's like give a strong opinion. Whereas I really hated Sad Story of Henry. Like I've said multiple times, that's clear. But I really enjoy the other two stories, and not counting Edward's Day Out, which I just find fine. Like, it doesn't add much, it doesn't add anything, but it doesn't remove anything for me. So I think I rambled way too long for a basic rating, especially because I wrote it down before, but I give this a Percy.
Well, Mary, for what it's worth, I severely enjoyed listening to your voice the entire time.
I enjoy listening to you.
Gay people. Alright, so with 2 5s and a 6 for this book as a whole, that means our mathematically accurate rating is 5.3.
Which I think is honestly a good rating for the book. It's above 5, but...
Yeah, it's, you know, it's good, and also the thing which we will use to judge all the other books afterwards.
Yeah. And it has merit on its own, but it's very much a benchmark for the others to follow.
Yeah.
Which...
I will say, personally, I'm very excited for the next set of episodes, because I think Thomas the Tank Engine is a significant improvement.
Oh,
to
definitely.
This.
I can't... As sorry as I am to be leaving the Thomas free zone in terms of, like, the books, I am really looking forward to talking about those, because I really like the next book. So
I'm not sorry. I think the next book is where the series takes off, and it's why I completely get why they chose, like, besides the obvious reason of having Thomas in the first episode, it's why I completely get why they chose Thomas Gets Tricked as the pilot for the TV series, because I think this book is a good benchmark, and I think on its own it's, and in terms of what it did later in the franchise, I consider it above just being there. But the next book is what makes the series.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of reasons why, like, Thomas ended up being, like, you know, the star of the show, and I feel like the next book is part of a major reason why. So yeah, that's the 3 Railway Engines.
And in regards to that, it's a story for another day.
No, we can't end on that again. We did that last episode.
We can and we will.
Have I made this just the finale now?
I feel like we need to say. I feel like we need to say more. So yeah, that.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was a fun book to, like, read through and think about critically, but it was also a very fun beginning of a podcast. Yeah.
Hey. I really enjoy doing this with you girls, and thank you for inviting me to be on, Jamie.
Aw. It's great having both of you on. This has been really fun, and I can't wait for the new year when we'll start taking a look at our next book, Thomas the Tank Engine. And
I didn't think about that. Thomas and Gordon is going to be the first episode of the new year. That's actually incredibly perfect.
Yeah. It's gonna be special. It's gonna be great. Off to the mainland without coaches or freight.
Without coaches or freight.
Please,
Off
sir,
to the
I beg
mainland.
you can't tell me no. Will you, won't you take me to the railway show?
Will you, won't you take me to...
So when are we doing the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends book club?
I would 100% be up for that. That is my shit. Please.
I have no idea how we would slot that in with the rest of this podcast, which is by my estimate, if we keep going one every 2 weeks, we're going to be doing this until the end of time.
I said it in the server. If we do this every 2 weeks and never break schedule, we have 6.8 years worth of episodes.
Yeah, so I don't know how on earth we're going to slot other episodes of podcast into this without totally bumping that back, but we'll see what happens. And we'll see you in the new year when we return with Railway Series Book Club. I've been Jamie.
I've been Rena.
I have been Liv.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Have happy holidays.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy winter holiday.
Enjoy opening presents around your winter holiday tree.
Yep.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Totally non sequitur winter holiday. Goodbye, everybody.
Also, wear a mask.
Yes, wear a mask.
Don't
Bye.
be like you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.